All right, and we are back, folks. Welcome to the Dev Twitch stream. My name is Nick Taylor. I'm a lead software engineer at Forem. Forem is the software that powers dev.
And I'm Christina Gorton. I'm a developer advocate here at Forem. And today we have our special guests, co-workers of ours, Josh and Fernando. Tell us about yourselves. Josh, you can go first.
Hi, I'm Josh. I am a principal developer here at Forum. My pronouns are he and him. I live in lovely, humid, and hot Wisconsin, United States. I've been with the company for about a year and a half, and my development background is mostly in Ruby and Rails and a lot of backend. And over the past couple of months, I've been under Fernando's watchful eye, been getting involved with helping out to improve the Forum iOS app.
Cool.
Hi, I am Fernando. I am a software engineer, also pronounced he, him, based here in Costa Rica as well as Christina. And I've been working with Forum for also about a year and a half and mostly focused on mobile efforts and also tinkering here and there with the Ruby on Rails project.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for both of you coming on the stream today. I know you've been working away at all things ecosystem related slash iOS app slash I don't know what else. I guess.
Oh yeah, we should probably mention that. We're both Fernando and I are both on a team that we call Ecosystem, which I jokingly referred to once as the junk drawer, which is really not great. It's basically the not it team. It's everything in Forum that isn't the actual Forum software, like the software that runs dev.to and Code Newbie, anything that isn't that. So our mobile applications, discovery services, some of the stuff we're doing for Codeland Conf. Get your tickets now.
Ooh, nice plug.
Yeah.
Awesome. And like we said a little bit ago, we're going to be talking today about kind of the iOS app that has been created for Forum. We're going to be talking about some of the other stuff that this team works on. So where do you want to start, Nick?
I guess we can talk. Maybe let's talk about the iOS app first. We had a launch of the iOS app recently. I can't remember what the official date was, but it was like a few weeks ago, or it wasn't a month
I
ago,
should
was it?
know that. I feel like I should know that.
I feel like I've been on the flight the test flight version since forever, so it's like to me it's kind of blurred when we released it. But I'll try and find the dev post about it. Um, but yeah, I guess we could start there with the iOS app. Question I've seen from folks before is like even why did we create an app if we're primarily a web-based like content site? So I wonder if could kind of maybe talk a bit to why we might have web apps, not web apps. I can't speak. Mobile apps.
Why do we have mobile apps and why would people want to use them? Go with that.
I can take that. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we've had that feedback too, both in like the spectrum has been from like, positive curiosity, like, oh, why is there a web app? Why is there a mobile app to like outright like, what do I need an app for? Well, leave me alone. So I'll say that the idea is that we're not trying to replace the web app in any way, shape, or form. The idea is to give users more options. So I'm the kind of user that if there's a native app, I prefer that usually over a web app, just because I have a personal crusade against tabs in my browsers, mobile or desktop. I want them all gone, and native apps are like the way I do that. So the native app is out there to support people that want a native experience. Also, a lot of the feedback we've gotten, people asking like, well, wait, Dev2 is a site. It works great on my phone. Why do I need an app? You probably don't, or maybe you don't like need an app for dev.
Yeah.
But as more and more forums come online, it might be nice, especially if you're participating in multiple forums, to have those all collected in one place. And, sure, maybe you have 5 or 6 like, tabs open on your phone and now you're juggling them. And that's where I think the power of the mobile app's really going to start to shine through.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And like obviously I've been dog fooding the app for quite a long time, but I do find it useful having them all in the same spot. Like we use Forem internally as well for our team.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I have Dev 2 in there. I'm on a few other forums too, like the Relicans, and there's Flow State from Lee Wine, or is it Wine or Win? I can't remember.
I think it's Win.
But
I think
yeah,
it's
it is
Win.
Win. Yeah,
Yeah.
two
Sorry,
ends.
Lee.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Lee. But he has a community for I guess it's like any kind of physical training or exercise related, and so I'm on there occasionally too. So I do like having it all kind of a one-stop shop, and so I definitely see the advantages there. But I think the, touching on what you were saying, Josh, about preferring the native experience, I can agree with that too, because like although we are primarily content based, I know we have hooks into native things regardless. Like I don't know if you want to maybe talk a bit about that, Fernando. Like for example, like images and all that stuff. Like when
Yeah, definitely. It's also a place where we can experiment and like bridge or yeah, we call it native bridge because it's how we are bridging through the web parts of the app with some native functionality. Because, for example, there are some deficiencies in the full-on web areas. Slowly and over time, different OSs, of course, Android and iOS, they are still developing and improving on the web APIs for example, audio playing. So those were one of the first integrations that we did with the native world. We wanted to provide like proper controls when you lock your screen, and things like in Safari, if you lock your screen, the audio stops playing, and some stuff like that we want to just like enhance and just add on top of what the web world offers.
yeah. No, it's kind of like a bit of a best of both worlds, I find. And
There's definitely stuff you can't do in a web like app as well. The one that like so we like on Dev we support podcast, Forum supports podcast and video as well. And if you were listening to a podcast on the web, that works fine on a desktop browser. That doesn't work so hot on a mobile browser. You might get background killed at any point in time. And a native app's going to be able to stay in memory a lot longer.
Yeah, definitely. Something I see a lot, kind of working in our, our repo and things people are asking and stuff. Usually it's a lot of, well, with the mobile experience, I want to be able, when I click on, say, that video, because someone's embed, YouTube or something in their post, I want that to open in like YouTube, in my like, my native app from there and stuff. Is that the kind of features, whether we have it already or that you're working on as well to kind of give that experience?
I think that's kind of where we want to go. We want to like we have more runway to do more native things. One thing, notifications are a huge thing, right? Like you can have notifications on the web kinda if the web page is open and you allow it, but you certainly a mobile browser, at least on iOS, does not support notifications popping up. Thank goodness, because that would be a nightmare. So you could actually start to get notifications if someone's replied to your story or made a comment or whatever. And I can imagine there's going to be other mobile stuff we'll want to get into. There's like widgets and there's like watch app stuff, and there's all different sorts of things we can start to add that if we stay or if we don't have a native app, we just don't even have the option.
No, that's a good point. So I know we've been working on the iOS app for a long time. We'll touch on Android. I don't mean that in a bad way. That came out wrong.
No,
It's like, yeah,
Fernando,
man.
Making things
it's been a
well
while,
is
hasn't it?
good.
Yeah.
Do you want to like, hey, do you
Yeah.
want to like just give the quick history, Fernando? Because it has
Yeah,
a
I think you
storied
should.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it started off as an experiment a while ago, even before I even started working on it. And yeah, the web view approach came up as a very simple and easy way to like work around our fast iteration pace. Like if we build a native app, fully native app, and want to change the entire look and feel and add new stuff, remove stuff, that it just you need a lot of people in the end, because Forem it's a big app that has a lot of surface area, and that came up early. Then we started adding these native integrations and stuff, and it was all dev. It was just one web view for dev. And of course, yeah, Forum came up, and the main idea was, how can I have a tab on each forum that I follow? You can, you know,
Yeah.
and it's a great thing. And personally, it's a great thing to get those notifications from different forums. You don't have to keep a tab on each one. You don't have to like it's on your phone. And I don't know if everyone is aware of the subscribe button, but you don't have to write a post. Like you can subscribe to someone's article, and you'll get notifications based on it. So things like that came up when we started, of course, with the dev app. But then those things brought up a lot of challenges that are like kind of like not that easy to see. For example, we have forum instances that are hosted by us, by Forum, but also it's an open source project. We just released the self-host runbook for anyone that wants to start their own forum, self-hosted on their own cloud provider. So then you start to run into some interesting areas where, how do you get push notifications? How do you deep link someone's URL from Twitter or Reddit or somewhere else? And I like, if we have the app, we want that to be a center place for any forum instance, not just the ones that we have access to, when we can provide production, private keys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're in that process.
Cool. And in regards to like the other native apps that folks have on their devices, so like and this also
Delete them
works
all.
on
Just have ours.
yeah. And this
Calendar,
also
who
works on
needs it?
iPad, because I've used this on iPad as well. So
Oh, yes. I will out myself now as a huge iPad fan. Yes, it needs to work on iPad. That's like you talk about like, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you would like have, a mobile device and you try to like load a website and it wouldn't work well because they all assumed you were on a desktop browser. And I feel like today things are a lot better. Well, the iPad still is a lot of times in that realm where it's like, are you a phone browser? Are you a desktop browser? I'm not quite sure. I'm just gonna like, I don't know, toss the dice and we'll CSS roulette. We'll see what you get. But yeah, we definitely support the iPad. Despite, I mean, there's dozens of us that use it. I don't know. I'm a huge iPad fan. It's really not like, from a development standpoint, it's not that much more work. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fernando, but like my experience has been, it's not that much work. You just have to remember it's there. That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. Just be careful, in the end, things will work, but will they look nice? Will they, expand correctly? Yeah.
When you rotate the iPad, will your apps go sideways? That was
So does that work similar to like how on the web on front end, like I was a front end developer for a long time and had to think about, the different sizes and working in CSS and doing media queries and all that fun stuff, or grid if we got to do that. And so does it work similar when you're working with the web view and trying to develop for these products? Are you thinking in the same way of like, what do you use to make it so that it works? Is it CSS that you're using? I don't even know.
It's mostly CSS within the website. Like the core
Yeah.
core part, everything will be website itself. So
Okay.
if the core works, it'll work like just fine. But it's sometimes hard to see. There are like native controls and there are native menu, some stuff that
Yeah.
those things we do have to keep a close eye on and
Okay.
just yeah.
This
think
might be a
about
good time
those.
to talk about like the architecture, like because I find
yeah,
it really
segue.
interesting because we use the website quite a lot. If you look, we have two repositories. One is Forum WebView iOS. Did I get that right? Forum WebView
Yeah.
iOS. Yes. That just basically is a WebView is an iOS control that displays a web page, and there's some extra bits in there to deal with things like, podcast playback. Well, instead of having a progress bar on this web page in the app, wouldn't it be nice if it played like natively? So that stuff's all in Forum WebView iOS. And then there's Forum iOS, which is the native application. And one of the controls it uses is Forum WebView iOS. So the reason we did that is so that we could leverage a lot of the mobile web stuff. And I know somebody out there is gonna be like, wait, isn't this just a web wrapper? Yes and no. Like there's a lot of like native control stuff that we've built in, and it communicates with the web page on your behalf. And it might like take a look at a web page that's being rendered and say like, okay, you got a control over here, but that doesn't work so great in the native app. I'm gonna intercept that, not show it on the page, and do something in native land instead of that.
Mm-hmm.
So for stuff in the web view, we heavily rely upon the media query CSS stuff. But things like, does it rotate? When you rotate your device, does it rotate? If Apple comes out with a, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe they make the new iPhone taller. Let the iPhone, like, the iPhone 14 is like twice as tall. It's just like really long. Yeah, that'd be great.
iTall.
It's just two of them stacked on
You
top
would
of
still
each
buy
other.
this, wouldn't you, Josh?
I would totally buy it. Yes.
He's already pre-ordered it.
Two of them. It's, let's say it's like, 400 by like 2000. Like that would all be in the native application. Like, do we support that dimensions? And it's real hit or miss. It depends how you lay stuff out. What's your experience been, Fernando? Like
It's interesting because there are a few there are a few different companies that also bet on web technologies, kind of like hybrid stuff. There's of course a lot of different approaches. Like there are just like things that will compile from web stuff into fully native, but with dimensions and everything, it is a bit of hit and miss and kind of like, okay, what will change with this new year? What new changes will come from a different API that Apple will come up with? For example, with iPad OS, I forget the name of it, but it's called like Sidecar or Side something where you split the screen. It's multitasking. The controls kind of get trickier because you kind of get like an even slimmer space in the viewport, and you kind of have to trial by error. I'm not the biggest iPad fan, like mostly I would guess out of budget.
I know.
Mostly out of practicality for myself. I have
They're
my phone on
expensive
my
here.
That's
okay.
That makes sense.
Costa Rica, they're very expensive here. That's why I haven't
keeping up
They're
with
not cheap here either, but some of them could be like there's a variety of them. Yeah.
Almost double whatever you have to pay for in the States to get it.
They're
shipped
already
over here.
arguably double what they should be. Like that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. So that makes it a little trickier to catch up on or keep up with the yearly churn over new iPads. They are very enticing, and
We should
I
say
think they're
this is a
awesome. And I
Forem
was very
expense. Fill it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, can I build my iPad collection to Forum? That sounds amazing.
We're making the app better. We need to make sure it works on
Yeah.
iPad.
I should really get this upgraded version because just in case. But
Oh yeah,
Josh
definitely the
was kind of
Mini and
talking
the
about
Pro.
like
Go on.
because the way web technologies work is usually like your container or element can like expand to the whole browser.
Mhm.
But like you were saying, Josh, like I know you're joking about the iTall, but like do iOS apps not grow like to fit like the containment of the screen by default, or I've never
I
done any
think
mobile development, so
the answer is it depends. So there are there's two main ways to do interfaces in iOS
okay.
right now: UIKit and Swift UI. UIKit is the oldness. Like, if I say old, it's like what, 10 years old? Like, it's been around for a while. UIKit's been around for quite a while.
Okay.
And in UIKit, it's very old school. Like, you get a graphical representation of a screen and you put
Okay.
controls on it, and you could drag those controls around, and you use this suggestion system called auto layout, where
Okay.
you kind of start to build rules. It feels somewhat like CSS to me. Like, you start to build rules, like you'd say, like, okay, here's a button. I would like it to be 10 pixels from the top of the screen and 10 pixels from the left edge of the screen. And then
Okay.
you get to do other things too. Like, here's another button. I'd like it to be 10 pixels away from that first button. Well, here's where it gets complicated. Those rules start to like overlap and cascade. And you can build
Okay.
yourself a real nasty nest of rules so that if you go to a device that all of a sudden rotates like an iPad and you rotate it, what will happen? Who knows? Try your rules and see what happens. It can be kind of crazy. The
Okay.
second way, the much newer way of doing interfaces on iOS is called Swift UI, and that is maybe 2 or 3 years old at this point.
Okay.
And in Swift UI, you don't really, there's still a graphical representation, but you don't really drag stuff on a canvas per se.
Okay.
Instead, you declare it very much like HTML. You declare as you go along, like, oh, I've got this kind of a horizontal space and I'd like some controls in it. And then here's a vertical
Okay.
space. I'd like some controls in it. And here's a spacer, take up all the room. And it works more like an HTML page where it just kind of like grows to expand as much as you want. And you can still have terrible overlapping rules.
Okay.
I just feel like there's less rope to hang yourself with. I have tried to struggle my way out of auto layout of stuff quite a lot, but you give up the flexibility. So the answer is, like, if the iTall comes out, I love this name. If the iTall comes out, what will happen? A lot of it depends on like how your app is set up. If I could create an app and I could say this app, it's 300 by 600. That's it.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's iPhone SE or bust. It only respects old
Okay.
school iPhone SE. If nothing, people have probably launched apps like this on their iPhones. Yeah, you launch a really old app, like an old game, and it's got big bars on the top and the bottom. Like, it doesn't even know about the sensor if you have a 10 or higher. Or when we went from the 4 to the 5 and the screen got a little taller, there were big bars up at the top and the bottom. Apps like that, they have not had the little switch flip to say, I support multiple layouts. But even if you check that box and say, I support multiple layouts, depending on how you laid out your content, it could go all over the place. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a complicated answer. It depends.
Because I remember when I got I got a new iPad at the start of the year, and I grabbed a backup from my phone to restore it, and then some apps that do have iPad apps, it brought on the phone app, and I know what you're talking about now. Like I think Instagram came onto it, and it was the phone version, so I had basically all this black area, and then it was literally the size of my phone in my iPad, the app. And I guess that's what that is, like, which is why, which brings up another question, like, if like some apps, from what I can see, at least in iOS, is there's an iPad app and there's a iPhone app too.
Mhm.
Are we doing that, or are we just saying like this is the one app and it supports both? Or like, can you do that? Or
One app to rule them all.
I'll
yeah,
let you
yeah.
answer this, Fernando.
Yeah,
Because
right now we
I'll
do
just
have,
rant about Instagram's
yeah.
app.
Yeah, we do have a universal app. So
Okay, okay,
over time, Apple has, expanded their options for developers. So
okay,
at some point you had to compile, or you had to have an entirely different layout for each one. And over time, Apple, started including more features within Xcode and within the tools that we have to
okay,
just have one screen or one layout, and it will be like a universal app. And
okay,
that's what Instagram did not have in the past. They just had the iPhone app, and
okay.
you were given the option to allow iPad installs. So that build that was completely focused for iOS got
Okay.
uploaded to the store, and it was just, you know, click away from just, yeah, allow
Okay.
iPads to install this, regardless of how it looks, regardless you're missing out on 60% of the screen. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
it works for both.
I feel like most apps
Okay.
now are, but they're called universal apps. Like if it's a purchase app, you buy it once, and there's iPad and iPhone code and layouts within the same
Okay.
bundle. You can always spot one of these on the App Store. If you take a look at the screenshots, there'll be a little
Okay.
like toggle. It'll say like iPhone or iPad. If you see that toggle, that means the developer supports it on both. You might
Okay.
also sometimes see a Mac toggle. That's where it gets really weird. Like
Okay.
some iPad apps on M1 Mac Apple Silicon Macs can run iPhone and iPad apps if the developer has allowed that.
Okay.
I think we have it turned on in our app. I wouldn't recommend it, but I mean, we're not going to prevent it. Like if you want to roll with that, go for it.
All right. YOLO's the
I've tried
way
it
to
once or twice.
go.
It's weird. It's real weird.
So that's
I
I'm
have,
fairly new
interesting.
to
So
the M1. No,
go ahead, Fernando. What'd you say?
no, just I fairly new to the M1 world, so I haven't tried
Yeah.
it. So that's a great.
Oh, that's right. You just got yours. Yeah. No, try to download our
Yeah.
app. It's craziness. It's as you can imagine, taking a platform that is built around touch and then try to drive it
Mhm.
with just a mouse and keyboard is kind of
okay.
bonkers.
But this is like a side note, but I'm curious because I haven't been following. Like I know there's the new Mac OS that's out. I haven't installed. What's it called again? It's
Monterey, it's in beta. It's in public beta
yeah.
right now.
Oh yeah, Monterey.
Monterey.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So when Monterey comes out, is like the grand plan for Apple is to have like a universal OS, I'm guessing. If that's why they're having these loading of iPad apps, or is it just kind of like maybe have both, but like it's still its own operating system? Like, I know this is not directly what we're talking about today, but you
No, it's
mentioned it. Yeah.
nobody knows. I've heard people like I've read and heard people say definitively, yes, Apple is merging the OSs. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
They have not said that. They will obviously not say that until it actually happens because it's Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so far, no, they're very separate.
Okay.
They're they're starting to look really similar, but there's big security differences. You can't just go to a website and download whatever you want to run on your iPhone or iPad. You could still
Yeah.
do that
Yeah.
on a Mac. You can't, just run up a terminal and start, typing, Unix commands on
Yeah. Yeah.
an iOS or an device. You can do that on Mac. So far, they're still separate. Apple's publicly said they're going to be separate, but like Apple's going to say that. I honestly don't know if they would merge them. I really
Okay.
don't. I think what's
Just want to
happening.
code on an iPad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't
That's
get it.
it.
We'll get into
Yeah.
that. Oh my God, that's my white whale. Um, I think the reason we see all these initiatives to put iPad and iPhone apps on the Mac and not vice versa is because frankly, there are way more apps on iPad and iOS. And
Yeah.
they also make Apple a whole lot more money. There's a Mac app store where you could pay Apple money. it hasn't been a huge success because people are like, well, couldn't I just buy the app directly from the publisher? Or couldn't I just like get a free app and like download it myself? And like there's not as strong an argument for the App Store because Apple doesn't have total control on the Mac. So I feel like that's part of the reason they want to bring over iPad and iOS apps to the Mac is because that's where frankly all the development is happening right now. Yes, I know there are Mac apps being developed. Yeah. But like that's where all the like new type development is. And that's where all the like frankly spending is happening with like, you know, rank and file consumers.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
If that happens, that may be because they are forced to, you know, with antitrust initiatives and laws. If that happens, I would assume that it's more because they were forced to do so instead of like they would be willing to do it themselves. Like you said, Josh, it's just too profitable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I have a question. It's going a little bit off topic, maybe, and we can get back.
We can't
to, like...
fix your phone. I'm just gonna point that out there.
I have an iPhone.
Fernando, how often do you get asked to fix?
I need the
phones?
Android app, so hurry up with that,
Oh,
y'all.
okay.
Oh,
I see how it is.
That's not my question.
It's
question.
coming.
I don't know if you all can talk about it at all, but I did find it interesting while it was going on, you know, for us internally seeing it. So if you can't talk about it, you can just say can't talk about it. But I want to know kind of more about how the process of like getting this app onto the Apple Store, which seemed to be a huge headache, a lot of stuff going on. Josh, I know you dealt with it a lot.
I don't know if you got a night school degree in like law. Yeah. Fernando suffered for the brunt of it. I just read like legal stuff. Fernando has to like, oh man, where to start?
Come up with weird ideas on how to jump through the hoops that Apple puts in for us. I mean, some things make sense, but there's a big human factor to Apple review and Apple process. So you never know what's going to come up or what's going to happen. It's based on interpretation from someone that you don't know.
Yeah. So
just
basically,
give me the stamp.
Yeah, you put your app. You put your app up on stage. It's like in front of Simon Cowell. Like it's basically a reality show. You put your app up for judging. Like it walks the runway. It gets comments. Like the whole thing. You submit it what's called for review, and then Apple publishes rules, and it's a long-ish legal document about what you can and can't do. Like you can't make an app that takes money from people, but you can't make an app that does one thing, but like tells people does something else. Like I can't make a jokey cheater app that says like, this will tell your fortune, give me $10 and then does nothing. Like you can't ship broken apps. You can't ship apps that like, you know, promote illegal activity. There's a bunch of rules around that, but then there are other rules that get really nebulous. Like a lot of people have focused on the buying part, right? You can't have a link to go to your website to buy something outside of your app. That's a no-no. If you're going to offer something for sale, you have to, if you do it through your app and mention it, you have to give Apple a cut of it. There's a whole bunch of rules around that. Then Apple's like really into security and privacy. So they came up with this login system called Sign In with Apple, and you probably have seen it in iPhone apps. It's starting to become a little more popular in the web, and it's a really appealing button. It just says sign in with Apple. And then you sign in with your iCloud account, and then you get these cool options like, do you want to share your email with this site or do you not? The problem is Apple says if you are going to have an app and you're going to allow people to sign in with social media accounts. So we have on Dev, we have the ability for people to create an account. Other forums can let people create accounts with email and a password. But we also, some forums allow people to log in with Twitter or with GitHub. And those are what Apple terms, third-party social media accounts. If your app allows people to create accounts with those or log in with those, you also must have sign in with Apple in your app. If you don't, you will get zeros when you walk the runway, and they will not. Your app gets rejected. Like that. Like literally, they just say you violated the rules. We're not putting your app up on the store. and then
Mhm.
Fernando goes into action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
And then we
one I
have
do remember happening. And then so that's interesting. So
like,
we
Fernando, do you
do
want to like?
have
I
sign
want
in
to
with
just
Apple, right?
yeah. Fernando
Okay.
could talk about that. Do you want to talk about like the
yeah,
experience?
there.
The
I mean,
the
it's a
trauma.
great thing.
Yeah. Sorry, bringing up the trauma.
Yes,
Go ahead, Fernando.
it's best to have 3 therapists than just one. Uh, thing is,
iPad,
you
iPhone, and
know,
Mac. You have to have, as a
Yeah,
developer, you have to have
yeah,
3 therapists.
the delicate thing is, or the weird or small print comes into play when you start implementing it, because
yeah. Okay.
OAuth, there's OAuth 1 and OAuth 2, but they are not like very, very down to the detail implementations. There are guidelines in how the process works, but different
Okay.
people or different providers can provide a different flow, slightly different
Okay.
flow. So you start going into special cases, and it may be a little too much detail, but for example, every single auth 2 provider that we have, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, they use a get request when you call back into our service. Apple
Okay.
is the exception to that rule, and Apple is the exception
Of course
to
they
many
are.
of the small rules like that. Yeah, we would assume that they are done in good faith and for a good reason. Like they chose a post request, and I can start to
Okay.
speculate and think, yes, a post request on the request callback on the callback phase will hide the details of the request because they're not coming in through the headers or through the URL. They're coming in the post body of the
Okay.
request. So they may not get sniffed as easily. Like those are just my speculations. I'm not the
Okay.
most, you know,
So like from a
best
security
security expert.
standpoint, yeah.
Yes. So then
Uh,
it's not as simple as just, okay, I'm gonna add this spider OAuth 2, it's Apple. I'm done with it because we do have a lot of things in Forem repo that work in a certain way for many
Yeah.
reasons, because um, for example, security, we have cookie configurations for dev, and for every other Forem instance, we have a specific configuration for the cookie setup.
Okay.
And then if you are using a post request instead of a get request from a third-party website, then you go down the rabbit hole of not getting the session cookie because it's a request coming from a third-party domain into yours. So the browser doesn't include cookies, and then you go into a rabbit hole there. But
Okay.
you need
'Cause-
signing with Apple if you're providing others.
I mean, when we added Facebook auth, it like to the forum, it didn't take that long, right? It was like a week, maybe 2, absolute tops, like to hook it on up. And if we were to play with another third party OAuth provider, probably wouldn't be that bad. But the Apple one, it's just there's at every turn. Oh, it's a post, not a get. Oh, the cookie looks like this. Oh, sometimes the cookie changes. Like just Apple doesn't
And the
have a really good
emails.
history with. Oh yeah, the email.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the email. The coolest part of the functionality is that you could click that sign in with Apple thing, and you can say, you know what? No, I'm on shadydeals.com, and I don't want to share my email address with them. So Apple
Okay.
will anonymize your address. You could say, no, don't share my email address. So basically, Apple works as like a proxy for your like credentials in that case. But
Okay.
most web applications assume they're going to get an email, or they're going to get a valid email, or an email formatted like something and give a password. And that particular thing, that causes all sorts of issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a pain.
There's even another, like, in paper is really great because Apple is being like the big brother and being like, no, I got you. I'll give you the access to that
I
You
got you,
have us.
fam. Yeah.
Yeah, but then the developers have to deal with those things. And I can even think of another extra special case where on signing with Apple, only the first time you register, you get certain data from the user, but every other second, third, every other sign in, you will only get the email. You won't get name or any other, data that you request within the scope, the auth process. But yeah, no, I don't want to ramble too much on the edge
No,
cases.
it's okay. No,
It's
I think
it's
it's
ultimately up to each
interesting.
forum like creator whether they want to enable sign in with Apple or not. But then that we do point out that has an impact on the mobile application. If you disable sign in with Apple, but you have enabled third party logins, when you go through the mobile application, then we have to show something that says you can't create an account here because Apple rules. So we've tried to set up the default so that doesn't happen, but it's very, very, it's very possible that you might have I don't know. I can't imagine a scenario in which you would only want, like, let's say like Twitter. We're only a Twitter like opt-in community. We're not going to allow email sign-ins, but there is a reason not to. You're concerned about
Maybe
fraud. Maybe your
Yeah,
Twitter, like, like there are reasons not to have it. So there are, implications to it, but yeah, that's the biggest bummer.
I'm kind of curious, just like talking about the requirements from Apple with the Apple sign-in, like, because the Forem app is, for all intents and purposes, a container app for multiple Forem instances. So what happens if, we know Dev supports Apple signing because we had to do that because that's like our flagship forum. So that's great. But what if I create my own forum? I have the Forem app installed, and then I say I want to add my forum to my list of forums, but it doesn't have Apple sign in. Is that like a breach? Is that where you were saying like that message from Apple will pop in and say, on this particular forum you can't sign in because you need to? Okay.
Yeah, we actually do that. We actually do that in the forum code. We take a look at, okay, are you viewing this on the forum app versus the mobile web? If you're on the mobile, if you're in Safari on your phone, you're fine, no problems whatsoever.
Okay, that was gonna be my other question.
Yep,
Okay.
it's just for the native app. Apple can't prevent us from loading a website on your phone yet. But I laugh, but sometimes I'm like, oh man. But yeah, in the native app, if you're visiting a forum, you've added it to your list, and it has a combination of factors that would violate those App Store rules, we throw up some guidance and let you know, like, hey, you're going to have to log in or create a password with an email. Or if there's a community that doesn't allow that, like Dev does not allow you to create a password with an account with just an email and a password for some, security and trust reasons. And if your forum doesn't do that and doesn't have GitHub or Twitter, we throw up a message saying like, sorry, you can't create an account through the app. I hate that experience. I think that kind of sucks. But the other place I bump into this personally is in the Amazon app. I'm a big Kindle reader. I buy a lot of books on Kindle. And if you probably run into this, if you have there's a book out, you're looking at it, doesn't look like there's a Kindle version. That's because you're in the Amazon app. And Amazon doesn't want to pay Apple 30% because it's a digital good. And if you sell a digital good, you have to pay 30% to Apple. Amazon, even with the Amazon sweet deals that they got, sweetheart deals they got going on with Apple, they don't want to pay it. So if I want to buy a Kindle book on my phone, I have to open up the website. I have to Amazon in my Safari, and then I can buy the Kindle book.
That's
also on Audible, you get credits, but you can use the credits in the Audible app, but you're not allowed to buy credits in the Audible app. You have to go into the website, buy credits, and then
it's I think that's the part where we will start to see some. I don't think the sided with Apple stuff. I cannot imagine like a congressional inquiry saying like, Apple, you have to allow people to sign in with just Facebook. We love it. Like, I don't see that happening. But the purchase thing, I definitely see something's going to change with that. But we'll see. But I just don't see Congress stepping in and being like, give people their Facebook only logins. That's what they want.
Yeah, because wasn't there, I can't remember which gaming company, was it Epic Games, where they wanted to have their own store or like their Like
Yeah.
it was within the app, and then it got shut down, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Fortnite got shut down in Apple, right? That was it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because Epic has Fort Bucks, Epic Bucks, V Bucks. They're called V Bucks. Why do I remember this?
Okay.
I don't even play Fortnite. Yes, this is currency in
Did a
Fortnite
dev
called.
discuss or no dev news on this, didn't
We
you?
probably did dev news on it. Yes, we probably did
Yeah.
dev news.
Yeah.
Oh, I think there was that one season where every story was about this Epic lawsuit. Oh, literally Epic lawsuit. Yeah, so Epic sells something called V-Bucks, a currency for Fortnite, and they
Okay.
picked this fight themselves. According to Apple's rules, if Epic is selling this digital currency through their app, they should be giving a 30% cut to Apple. Now,
Okay.
Amazon doesn't give 30%. Amazon gives like 10%. Like some, court disclosures came out that like big companies make these agreements, but Epic didn't want anything of it. So they just said, fine, we're going to put it up there. We're not going to share the money with Apple. We're going to put a link that like lets you pop up a web page to buy it, so we don't have to go through Apple's transaction processing. Super against Apple's rules. They ban them within about like a millisecond, and off to court they go.
Yeah, and what I don't want to derail our iOS app conversations, but it like Epic's pretty big, and like Fortnite is like a massive game, so like I feel like there's probably got to be some leeway that they're gonna have to cave, like upset iOS users.
It's still going through. Most industry people think Epic will not win this battle, because Epic did it themselves. Apple said these are the rules. If you like them, come on in. If you don't like them, go away. And Epic's trying to argue your rules aren't fair and they should be struck down. And Apple's trying to argue, well, we told you what the rules were and we're justified in kicking you out because it's our playground, our rules. There's a separate discussion whether the rules are fair. Yeah. It's it's funny though, because like
even if they're big.
Yeah, I feel like every iOS discussion eventually comes down to the App Store. It is both a blessing and a curse. It really is. Like
that's the difficult thing. You're arguing with someone you don't know, you don't see, you don't even they're just like
are they even human? We're not sure.
Yeah, and they're quoting some guideline and they say you need to change this or fix this, and then they over the years it's gotten better. They've added contest. Yeah, they've added some contest conversations you can request to have a re-review.
Yeah,
and
you can appeal.
You can appeal, and it's gotten a little better. But in the end, if they say no, it's no. So, for example, for us, if they go into the Forem app and for example, in the Forem app, you can add different Forem instances. So you have dev and you have code newbie and a lot of others. And if you add a specific one that does not allow signing with Apple, then if the reviewer found that one and it says, okay, well, we're going to shut you down, there's nothing for us to say regarding that. And the bad part with it is that creators, if I am a new creator of a new forum instance and I want to create a new forum about whatever, crypto, NFTs, or something, and now, for example, I want to, let's say I want to add signing with Apple. The problem is, for you to add signing with Apple, you need to pay $100 a year to have an Apple membership. And it's not an easy process. You need to request the certificate. It's not something anyone can do. You need to have a little bit of technical knowledge in order to get through that. So it does feel like a very, bad process for everyone out there. It's good on paper. You're providing users with privacy, like you're allowing them to sign in to any app they want without having to have Facebook or a Twitter account. But you run into that issue.
We've
Go ahead. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was gonna say, so something we've talked about. I think we've talked about this roadmap. I don't know. I hope I'm not giving anything away. We've talked about like what if we like as Forem we started to have like a forum like login. Like we're collecting all these forums in an app. What if you could just like have a login shared across different forums? That would like solve a lot of our problems, because then we're not asking the the flow state forum to pay $100 to get an Apple
Yeah,
login. Like we could handle it ourselves. So that's definitely something we're investigating, especially as we like start to host other people's forums in the cloud.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense in terms of like removing a lot of friction to just have an app out there.
Yeah.
The other question I had, because again, like I mentioned before, I've never done any mobile development, and I've read about this before, and I kind of know high level to some degree what happens, but because we're partially web based, like in terms of the app, like I remember reading stuff about apps in the Mac App Store, like if I update the website, like the code has changed, but it's like web code, like like is that still like an issue? I remember reading about this at least a few years ago, where it's like, oh, that's like an unofficial update, kind of, and then they can block it. And I'm just curious what both your thoughts are about that, or what this, I guess what happens in that scenario, and if it still applies.
Do you wanna touch on that, Josh? I mean,
Did I open a can of worms?
Yes. No, I'm trying to think. Okay, there used to be. I'm going back to my history lessons here. There, a long time ago, there was a rule that said apps cannot execute code or download code that is executed, and you started to see a lot of apps get in trouble, especially web-based native apps that had web content started to get rejected en masse from the App Store because they're downloading, they'd be like, here's a menu. It has some JavaScript. Whoa, you're running code. You're interpreting it. Not cool. So Apple has changed their guidance. It's now, you cannot download executable code. You can download code. So JavaScript, totally fine because it's not executable code, it's interpreted. So we're fine on that front. But for example, if we were to download, gosh, I don't know how that we would do this. The other thing is iOS is so locked down. Like I don't know how this would happen, but like if we were to download, I don't know, some like Swift modules and like try to load them dynamically at runtime. Like, or we try to push an update over the wire. That, some apps do update themselves over the wire, but in terms of JavaScript, we don't really have to worry. The App Store rules have been changed so that those common use cases are supported.
I think they have even just stopped worrying about that much over time because I mean there's so much gray area in that regard. I have some friends that work in other companies and they basically build their apps with just modularity in mind. So everything is a module and everything are components and the server dictates everything. So is that runtime thing? Like, is that a runtime executable code? The server is telling you today the homepage will have a carousel on top that will measure half of the screen and then banner and then some other stuff and all scrollable vertically. And then they can change it like just by editing something in the server, and now everyone's app has a different layout and you can A/B test and there's some really cool stuff in there. But like the app is just like a big block, like it's just like a big box of Legos and the server tells you how to assemble them basically.
There's also there are also pass-throughs right now. I was just like looking at the current rules. There is also an exception for educational apps. So if you wanted to ship an app to, I don't know, COBOL. Let's say we're running a COBOL education app, favorite language of mine. Normally you wouldn't be able to compile this stuff, but if you're writing an educational app, you're allowed to do that within the confines of the app. Keep in mind that all the apps on iOS and iPadOS are heavily sandboxed. So your ability to like actually do anything with any of this code is pretty locked down to begin with.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, I have kind of two areas I want to dive more into. If Nick, you don't have more you want to say about that?
No, I'm good.
Is that enough legal talk for today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe for like a while, actually.
Hey, I brought it up. It's okay. I thought that was good. So I was thinking of two areas that people one, I'm in the repo all the time. I see people's comments and things on stuff. So two areas that I've kind of seen people comment on. So first, can you talk about like the dev native app and then Forem and why we switched over and why we're asking people to switch over? I think that's come up a lot for people. And then also, we mentioned it before, and if you want to dive into it a little bit more, kind of our plans in the future with Android, now that we have an Android developer.
Great questions.
Cool.
Great questions.
Why don't you talk about the history stuff, Fernando, and then I'll delicately tap dance around
Definitely.
Android.
Definitely. Well, I see Forem app as a really specialized browser. So in the end, you don't have to manage tabs. You always have the tabs that you have, your forums and stuff like that. Over history, yes, we started off as dev, the company and the website, and over time we've grown and generalized our code base for anyone to start their own communities. So the main attractive to me, or in general, is that you can easily swipe between all your forums, all the forums that you follow. If you only follow one, yes, at first it may feel like it's too much overhead. Why do I need to add all this? But we're growing into more communities, adding new things, hopefully adding new creators to create more communities over their interests. There's optimizations in there along the way for people. For example, I'm not gonna go too long on this, but and Nick, you helped me work on this part of the web part of the code base, which is uploading images. When you're creating a new post and you want to upload images, if you're uploading an image from your phone on a web browser, it will work just fine. But images taken on your phone are usually very big. They're 2-3 megs, maybe even more, and you don't really need that much stuff. And we have this native picker, this native image picker that allows us not only crop, but just like a better experience altogether. Even add some filters, but it will optimize your data usage and some other stuff like that. So it's like, to me, the Forem app is like the specialized browser that will enhance the experience over multiple forums. But that's like my gist of it.
I know everyone wants that image optimization on our desktop too, so that's nice that we have it on our application.
I do like the native image picker because one, you can apply filters to the image you took, and also it'll crop it. So like we say like this is the size that, like, because I'm sure we've all done this. If you've ever put a header image on your blog post, it looks great when you upload it, but then you go to preview it and you're like, okay, it's because we have certain dimensions, so like it doesn't look as good, obviously. So I like with I like it with the native integration where I can just move it within the cropped area, and then I can get like, okay, that's good enough for the image I took. So it's definitely nice having these touches of nativeness in it.
Yeah, the photo's the big one where it comes up for me too. Like I've also been on other websites where it's like you upload a picture and then like it's warped. Like they didn't say they wanted a square image, but they just took whatever image you wanted, and then the image comes out, it's like all squished, and you're like, oh man.
I look lovely in this.
I'm a beautiful skewed rectangle. Look at me.
You asked about the Android app, Christina. So we recently had a developer join Forem. His name is Rajat, and he is going to be spearheading the Android development, which is very, very exciting. It's just getting started. Our initial target is our initial target is to have feature parity with the iOS application, and so that's you should be able to view a forum, log in, have notifications, have native media playback controls, like everything that we have in the iOS app right now. We want that to be in the Android app, and then once we get there, we can start talking about like each platform's strengths, like, you know, widgets and maybe shortcuts integration on the iOS app and Android stuff. I'm not an Android person, I'm sorry. A special Android stuff on the Android app, whatever that is.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the news on that. It's gonna be a little while before we have an
Yeah.
Android app, but we're working on it because I mean, frankly, Android's over half the market. It's a really important
Yeah.
market for us, especially for developers that are reading dev. Like there are
Mhm.
far more Android users, I would wager, than iOS users.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we be there. There's no reason we can't be. So that'll be a real adventure
Yeah.
too. We should have Rajat on the stream.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, for sure.
he's going to be developing an Android app. I've never done any Android development. I don't know if you have done any, Fernando.
A little. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's not my expertise, but I've been able to help maintain the dev Android app a little bit and try to get up
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
now that we have.
That's a good point.
on.
We should point out there is a dev Android app right now.
Yeah.
There just is not
Yeah.
a Forum Android app. So similar to how we are moving from the dev iOS app to Forum to support multiple forums, that's the plan as well with the Android app.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I have used
Yeah.
the dev one on my phone. Awesome.
Yeah, we don't want to release it before it could replace the functionality that's already there. Like we don't want anybody to have
Yeah.
to switch over and like lose features. That
Yeah.
I've done that with
Yeah.
apps for it. It really stinks.
Yeah, and also to be clear, why we don't have a Forum Android app yet. It was we were looking for you know, someone to come onto the team to help with this initiative. It's not because we wanted to ignore Android. Like
Oh no,
Josh
not at all.
like Josh pointed out, like Android user base is probably way bigger than iPhone. I mean, they're both very popular, obviously, but
Yep.
but yeah, and I know you said it's not your field of expertise, Fernando, but I think we talked about this briefly either on a Zoom call or maybe it was on the previous stream when you were on a little while back. But the Android app is going to be built in Kotlin, right? Which is the new language that you build Android apps with. Is that correct?
Yes. In general, the major industry trend is leaning into Kotlin. It's way more modern and less verbose than Java.
Okay. So will you
Thank
still
God.
need to, if we're using Kotlin, that means there will be no more need for using stuff like Gradle and all that, because that's really Java specific.
There is, like, we still use Gradle. So Gradle has some plugins, or Android Studio has some plugins for Kotlin syntax within Gradle. So you get some nice things from Kotlin language that you can use within Gradle.
Okay.
We haven't defined like the fine print of it, but in a general sense, I do believe we use Gradle. It's like a very
Okay.
important tool in general. It's like not using NPM or Yarn
Okay.
on a project. Yeah.
Cool. And I know the work on the Android app is underway. Are we looking for feature parity with the iOS app? I would assume yes, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, we want to
that's
get we have a list of like the kind of basic stuff that we need to see before we'll release it. I mean,
Okay.
I think we're definitely going to have like, you know, beta testing and all sorts of great stuff like that. But before we like actually have anybody start kicking the tires, you know, you got to be able to log in and load up a forum. You have to be able to like browse multiple forums. Have to be able to like have some sense of notifications. Yeah, I think we want notifications to be there. Native media playback is also a big deal. Those are kind of the basics that we want to see before we would launch it.
Okay.
And I can't give you a timeline. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Oh
fine.
yeah.
Like,
Not asking that. Just
it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
actually
We're working
it's
on
really
it.
hard because we were talking about like, well, how long did the iOS app take to develop? And it's like, well, there were a couple of iOS apps and they were like a side project way back in the early days of dev. So if you look at the repository, like, oh, it took 3 years to be released. Like, well, no, it didn't. I mean, I don't know, Fernando, you probably felt like you were working out for 3 years, even though you haven't even been at Forum that long. But like, I don't know. We'll find out. I think what's interesting about the Android app is that it's going to be much less initially about product like development, like things like on the iOS app we have a picker for adding a forum and switching between them, and now that we have that kind of interaction model, we want to mimic it. We obviously want to mimic it with a native Android look and feel and everything appropriate to that platform, but we have a model about how the user experience should work, so we're not going to have to fight and have a bunch of different betas where we try to figure out what the best way for the user is to approach that. We know that already. So that way it should be a little more streamlined.
Okay.
Yeah, a little less exploration than
So how is it to get into the Android store versus like the Apple store? Is this going to be as much of a headache, or
are they just
you don't know yet?
Come on in. No, don't worry, don't pay anything. Just you're in.
There's a review. Like there is a review process. Like you have to submit your app and it gets reviewed. I think the Android store gets a really bad rap. People say oh, it's just full of crap, and Google lets whatever they want in there, and there actually are review standards, but my general impression is that the grading curve is a lot more generous. Yes.
Yeah. And over time, they've gotten a lot better with it too. In the past, those misconceptions may not have been that much of a misconception, but they have stepped up a lot in that regard, and with a lot of good reasons for it. For example, children's apps and a lot of restrictions for age and for content, like user-generated content, stuff like that.
Okay. And the App Store is rolling out security. The Google Play App Store. Oh my God. The Google Play App Store. They're rolling out security type disclosures, Apple added their store. So those two stores are trying to get to parity as well. A lot of time, it came up in the court case with Epic. Google also wants to charge 30% on digital purchases. That doesn't get a lot of press. I know everyone's like, oh, Google does the exact same thing. The difference is that there are multiple app stores on Android. And in theory, you could be on a different app store, and it's much easier to sideload an app. I don't know if we've talked about are we going to have the Android app available for sideloading? We haven't really talked about that. That's an interesting question. I know we're just
no one knows, but it's going to bring
up. In theory, it'll be open source, so you could download it, you could build it for yourself, you could sideload it to your device if you wanted to.
Okay, yeah. I had a couple questions about the Android, which you may or may not have the answers to, because
this will be good. This will be good. If you didn't think I was qualified to talk about iOS, get ready. Oh man.
Yeah, well, one I'm curious about, how we were discussing before about how Apple sign-in is a requirement. Is there a similar requirement with the Google App Store where you need? I mean, Google is a social login, but is Google a requirement to have as a login for an app if you have other social logins, or no?
I don't think there is. No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I've not seen anything that says you have to sign in with Google, or I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay. The other question I had was, this is more related to our own development. It's not Android specific, but we have the Forem web view for iOS. I imagine it's the same, the abstraction will be the same. We obviously can't share the code because it's two different code bases and languages, but it'll be the same idea, and we'll have a Forem web view Android, I imagine.
Yes, but not in the short term.
Okay.
I can talk a little bit about this, and stop me if I go too far deep into it, because this is daydreaming into the North Star and some of the big ambitions, big quote unquote big picture ambitions. Since we are, there are some pros to following this web view approach. There are many pros, and yes, there are some cons. But one of the biggest pros of having this architecture choice is that anyone could embed the entire Forem community experience in their own app. So
Okay.
I've talked about this, and this is a lot of daydreaming kind of thing. But if you have your own app and you're a big company, you have your own app and you port both iOS and Android, and you want to create and nurture your community, you can have within your own app, you just import our SDK, quote unquote. It's just like the wrapper custom class of the web view. It has all the features, all the native controls, all the native bridging, all those things are managed in the web view repo. So if we have those out there, anyone, for example, I've put this example before. I've shared this in mentioning that if I have an augmented reality app where you take pictures of your living room and you add furniture, you want to share them and you want to have a community over that or around that, then you could have just like a little button that says go into my community within your own native app that your developers created, and then you have the entire Forem community within your own app. And it ties into some underlying architecture decisions in the Forem web repo. For example, this is something that we added recently that's called consumer apps. So this new app it's you can add a consumer app, and then your Forem instance will send push notifications directly to that app. It can send push notifications to Forem app, so I could have my Forem app and I can swap between all the Forem instances that I have. But if I have my own app, it's a different consumer app. But the Forem repo itself is able to configure itself to send push notifications directly where you want it. And it's kind of like a North Star kind of thing. It's not any immediate short-term goals that we have, but it's my kind of daydreaming into, what if Tesla creates their own community forum and within the Tesla app. I want to share how my autopilot experience was, something like that.
Yeah.
You want to load that on that big 17-inch screen in your Tesla and just load up Forem.
With the black bars on the bottom and the top. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying, Fernando, because you still have like the Forem app itself if you do want to have like all the communities together, but embedding it and making it part of your own app, I can see that, like you want your app to be a one-stop shop, including your community. So I can see that making a lot of sense for some folks.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we have started hitting we're getting close to the hour and a half, but we're not there yet. So we do have more time to chat. If you all want to talk about any other topics with anything else you want to explain to users of the app or anything else with SwiftUI or anything like that, we can touch on. You all have the floor.
Oh, wow.
We can also
what do you got,
stare at
Fernando?
each other awkwardly for 15 minutes if you want.
No, if it's gonna get awkward on the say, it's okay. We can wrap it up.
Stare down.
Talking about
we all
history,
don't get to see each other enough. Go ahead.
Yes. Talking about history, since we started with the dev app years ago, and over time with the experimentation and the exploration phases, we definitely chose UIKit for a few reasons to start the Forem iOS app. And we haven't open sourced the Forem iOS app itself yet, but over time, we've also considered migrating to SwiftUI. There's a lot of great things about SwiftUI, and having worked with auto layout for years, I've come to like it. Not like it. It's kind of like the Stockholm syndrome where I'm just used to it and I'm okay with it. And it doesn't give me that much issues. But yes, you do have a lot of great things in SwiftUI, being declarative and everything being in the source code. The biggest problem UIKit is that you have like what you see, what you get editors and you also have code separate, and sometimes you configure something here and something there, and it gets messy, especially with bigger apps.
It's sometimes you have to like, I started learning UIKit and I like screamed out loud the first time I was doing a tutorial, and they're like, to hook something up, you have like your graphical interface and you have to command click on a control and drag it somewhere. And that created a line in my code editor that I then had to modify. I was just like, what is this like mid 90s UI like nonsense? Like, what is this? It is like a visual web builder from like the 90s. It is crazy nuts. It's just there's none of that in Swift
Visual
UI.
Basic.
Yes.
I
did Visual Basic.
Visual Basic, and for folks who've never used Visual Basic, I also did ASP.NET, and they did kind of web forms and stuff, but you would double click on the UI and it would generate like an on-click handler, for example, and then you would do your code. And it was good and bad, but I found for the most part, I was more in the code view typically. It's nice to click on it, and I mean, this is also different when it was like a pixel perfect UI and like the resolutions weren't changing like they are today with like media queries and stuff. But yeah, I found, as at least from a web development perspective, I just find I'm always in the code view, like markup or JSX if I'm in Preact or React. I'm never like, I get the appeal of the visual editor and dragging, and maybe it's just because the tools need to get better. I know there's stuff like Webflow and so like, which I haven't really used that much, but yeah, it is kind of weird where you double click, it generates this boilerplate, and then you do your things.
And there's like special notations behind the scenes that will say like, oh, okay, this variable, or they call it an outlet. This outlet in your code is actually connected to this visual control on this storyboard is what is used for like visual layout and UIKit. And it's just, there's definite magic behind the scenes. You don't see it when you're in Xcode. That's the Apple's IDE. But if you ever load up the file, they're just text files. If you ever load up the files, you see all this text that's been placed in there. And it really screws up with like Git commits. Because like, you might just like, your cursor might just brush a mouse on the like storyboard, and you'll see like 15 files changed and like tons of code. You're like, wait, what happened? Because under the covers, all this stuff changed behind the scenes. It's crazy.
It gets messy with merge conflicts with multiple people working on the same project. I mean, I've written about this before, but it's with big projects and multiple people working on a single project. When storyboards came out, because in the past it used to be like just, they called them, and that's another thing I understand, they called them nib files, called XIB files.
Interface builder, the name of the tool in the OG in the OG days was interface builder.
Yeah. So to me, it was even better to just like, let's not use storyboards. I feel like I've been like that. I don't want to say older guy, but just saying, oh, you kids these days with storyboards. No, you just got to keep using nib files, because when you have 5 people working on a project and you start putting pull requests, everyone's getting conflicts, and they're not easy conflicts. They're conflicts on 5,000 line XML files that you have no idea. You've never touched those XML files. They're all interface builder generated. So that gets messy. But the Swift UI world is very promising, and it very much seems like the future. And we're very much spearheaded by Josh. We're moving away from UIKit slowly.
Josh is like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. I'm out. Man. Swift or bust.
Man. Swift UI, man. I like it a lot more, but then again, I'm really new to iOS development, like just a couple of months, and UIKit has like 10 years of history behind it, and it's and like to Fernando's point, we use a package called SnapKit that lets us try, like when we talked about the example before, like I've got a button and another button this far apart. If you're using Xcode, you kind of have to use the visual tools to set that all up.
Okay.
There's not an option. Like Apple's like, no, you're gonna click and you're gonna set these sliders and that's gonna happen. And there's packages out there that let you try to do it programmatically, but it's only some of the functionality is there, and sometimes it gets really hacky, and you're trying to swim against what Apple wants, which is always, the new version comes out and it's all, and SwiftUI reminds me a lot of React, honestly. Like you're building little
That's what I
components in
heard,
code. The weird thing is it like makes more sense to me than React. Like I've tried so many times to learn React. But it makes a lot more sense to me. You've got your state variables, and there's like the idea of a central, one source of truth, and you're passing variables and you don't want to mutate them. You're trying to compose things in small little components, and that's SwiftUI is much more like that. And the idea is that like here, here's a UI. When something changes behind the scenes, we re-render it. Like there's that whole like React re-rendering, DOM re-rendering thing going on. So I think it flows better. Like as a web developer, it like makes more sense to me than command dragging from a button to segue. There's this thing called segues in UIKit. Like to show it. Like this is the one thing that like when I'm learning a new framework, this is where it always falls down for me. Like we've got a page. I'm going through a tutorial. We made a hello world. There's a button. It does something awesome. I have another screen. How do I show that other screen? How do I navigate from screen 1 to screen 2? And I feel like 50% of the tutorials that are out there for any language, they're just like, you're never going to go to another screen. Forget it.
Yeah, no, it's just one page. That's it.
It's one page. It's hello world.
Yeah, forget about it.
Yeah. It's really interesting though, dude, because you could mix and match. So we have a grand total of one SwiftUI view in the Forem iOS application. It's a very intermittent loading screen that you only see sometimes. But it's SwiftUI code in the middle of all this UIKit code. And Apple lets you load SwiftUI. So that part's really nice. So we don't have to just like start a third version of the app, which frankly I don't think we would ever do. No, we can start to we can either replace controls with SwiftUI controls, we can build new stuff in SwiftUI, we can start to slowly bring it in. So that's really exciting.
That's what I always liked about Vue versus like React, because you could kind of do that too. You could kind of bring in just a little bit of the functionality you want with Vue and put it in without having to like redo everything.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So we're starting to sprinkle that more in there, which I'm pumped about.
No, I think that's a great approach, because it's incremental. It's because like whenever full rewrites happen, that's like, yeah, we said it'd be done in 2 months, but it's 2030 now.
And there might not be any like benefit to if we said tomorrow, like we rewrote the Forem iOS app in SwiftUI, what's different? Nothing. Like that's a
it's
bad
better
use of
for
time.
us.
Yeah. But all
there's
the
no business value. Yeah.
all the newer technologies that are in like iOS 15, they're all starting to require Swift, like widgets that you could put on your home screen. You have to write those in SwiftUI. You don't have a choice. And I think we're going to see more and more of that stuff going forward.
No, I'm going to open one of my windows real quick because I'm in the dark. I'll be right back.
Yeah, Christina went dark.
You said it was going to happen, yeah.
Yeah. I thought she was joking, but it got pretty dark there.
Have you had a chance to play with SwiftUI very much, Fernando?
Just a little bit. I mean, I played with tutorials and working out smaller apps, but just out of the box, straight up SwiftUI, like full apps, not sprinkling it in with our Forem app. But it looks very interesting. The detail parts, for example, our Forem web view repo will likely stay in UIKit because the web view is a UIKit component. Mm-hmm. So that integration will likely stay in SwiftUI, but it will be a moment, like there will come a moment where our entire Forem app will be UIKit and just like importing our Forem project, Forem WebView project, and just interfacing with it. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Apple even calls out, they had a session on web stuff, and they're just like, in your SwiftUI code, you're going to be using this. So they even there's a lot of controls. It's really early days for SwiftUI, and it's gonna be a while before there's a cutover.
But that's a really smart move from their part, because that's the biggest problem, at least I had when it was Objective-C back in the day, and when you wanted to do the Swift swap, when you wanted to refactor into Swift, that was all or nothing. So a big app with like thousands and thousands of lines of code and many views and nip files or storyboards, then you get into that problem. Okay, it will be like a 3-month effort in order to refactor, and you won't see anything new until we finish the refactor. So it's an
That's
all or
really
nothing
unsatisfying.
kind of,
Yeah, that's horrible.
new approach. It gets much better, and it's getting a lot more robust now, and there's a lot of people really excited about SwiftUI out there, and I am excited as well. There's a learning curve, but it's nice so far. So far, it looks very promising.
I feel like that's just mobile development in general. Like I think if you like mention to people like, writing apps for your phone, like some people are just like, that sounds so cool. Like I think that's the coolest thing ever, and other people are just like, oh no,
That's
the
actually why I
downside
bought a
is
Mac.
that the downside is any phone app I use now, if there's any like bugs or anything, I'm just like, oh, I bet I know what's going on. Oh, or like I'll use an app on my phone and like the layout is a little happen here. Oh, there's this and there's that. It's like in my mind, I'm like, this is a problem all engineers have, right? Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do this as a
curtain
front
has
end
been lifted.
developer. I'm like,
Yep.
what?
Yeah.
I could fix this easy. I see what's wrong.
Yeah, all right. I
The
open
cur-
the dev
Yep.
tools to log into some site where it's clearly broken or
Right.
submit some
Yep.
form, It's like
Yeah, the magic of computers is a little ruined. It's the magic of like phones is a little more ruined now. So that part's not so great, but the rest of it's really fun.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, we are getting close to 4:30 here, and I know folks have other things to do, so I'm gonna do the awkward segue to let's wrap things up. But I
It's
just
only
wanted to
awkward when you make
say,
it awkward.
I know I wanted to make it awkward though because they're my coworkers. So it was a lot
Awkward
more
is a
fun
feature.
that way. Yeah. But just want to say it was super awesome hanging out with both of you today. There's a lot of stuff I wasn't aware of, and thanks for sharing all that. Christina dropped a ton of links in the stream chats for folks to check out
Cool.
in terms of the all the all the I can't speak all the projects we've been working on. Yeah, and like you said, we'll definitely have Rajad on at some point. I think that'd be great to talk about all things
Yeah.
Android. Yeah, and
I just
then
want to leave it with, oh my gosh, I see your dog, and I don't think I've ever seen your dog before, Josh.
My dog. I have a
So
Shiba
then-
Close the
Inu.
shades.
Yeah, I closed
Yeah,
the
no
shades.
shade.
Usually these are windows behind me, they're open, and so when we have forum team meetings and stuff, it's just my face and it looks like, a
Yeah.
radiation explosion behind me. No, it's nap time for the doggos. Yeah, she's
I just
adorable.
love when animals join our streams. It tends to happen, and I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So just wanted to point out the cute
They
doggy.
spend most of their day there. I have another dog that you can't see off camera, and they spend most of their day on I have a little desk in our bedroom. They spend most of the day there. It's nice. I like it.
It is nice. The only other thing I was gonna say is there's no stream next week. I'm on vacation and Christina will chillax.
You're not going to stream from vacation?
Yeah, exactly. I could from like maybe a tethered
Doesn't
phone
need
with
to.
a very I don't even know if I have internet where I'm going. I'm going
That's amazing.
glamping / camping.
Nice.
But in 2 weeks, their name's escaping me. Who do we have on in 2 weeks? It's not Natalie, it's
I actually don't think we have anyone on for the next 2 weeks, so we'll have to see. Maybe we'll get someone to come on.
All right. Guest appearance by TBD. Cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you in maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure yet. So, all right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.